Welcome to Sacred Time. I'm Dennis Kaminsky. He's Maurice Starr. We started doing the podcast again a few weeks ago, and we realized when we started that we were just trying to start talking about conversations and just giving our opinions with no context at all whatsoever on who we are. So last week we came up with a game to get to know each other a little bit better, or for you guys to get to know us a little bit better. We've known each other for quite a while. We've been playing 20 questions, and last week we each asked each other 10 questions. So this week we're going to pick right up where we left off. We do not know the questions that we're asking each other ahead of time. These are things that we've always been interested in asking one another, and we maybe have not yet. And they're also a little bit customized so that you guys can get to know us a little bit better. So without further ado, I'm going to pitch the first question to you. This one was a difficult one to word, so I apologize.
Shoot.
All right, Maurice, as a black man, do you ever feel a certain pressure to present yourself in a certain manner while interacting with people who are not black? Also, on the back end of that question, do you feel a pressure when interacting with people who are to present yourself in a certain way? Or to uphold a certain image, I guess, is probably a better way of wording that question. So,
Nah. Damn, that's a good question. I think it's a bit of both, and I hate to kind of. It's not a cop out. It's the truth. It's a little bit of both, where I definitely find myself wanting to always stay true to who I am. Yet at the same time, I'm also very aware that in the world that we live in today, you still do have to gauge certain situations by your environment and the people you talk to. Like, I kind of akin it to the fact that something I always heard growing up, which I never really understood. I get now, but I never understood growing up because it just didn't make sense to me. But a lot of people going through schools that were predominantly black, they'll say like, "Oh man, you talk white," and I, again, never understood it, never got it. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. But I understood where they were coming from. It was different, and I didn't.
Did you ever say indubitably?
No.
That's the only time I'm okay with that. When somebody says that, like, yeah, that's the one thing you say that does sound pretty white. Indubitably.
Yeah. I don't think I could pronounce that, so there's that. But no, like I said, I get it, and I never felt like I needed to change how I talk because, again, wanting to stay more true to myself than to change who I am or how I act or what I think to kind of make other people feel comfortable. I went through most of my childhood trying to make everybody else comfortable, even into my adult years trying to make people comfortable. And, at a certain point, you got to realize what's the worth of doing that if it's sacrificing who you are. There's always the case, to care and be thoughtful of others, but at the same time, if they have a problem with who I am or the things I say, then maybe that means something in a sense. Maybe I shouldn't talk to them, or maybe I shouldn't associate with them, or maybe there's something greater to understand than just they don't like the way I talk or don't like something I do. So to that point, I try not to change myself, but at the same time, I also try to stay at least respectful enough to know that if there's a certain conversation that I shouldn't have around someone or with someone, I try to avoid that. And I also will try to kind of make sure that no, that's really it. I thought I had something more to add to that. No, yeah, it's real situation dependent for me.
Gotcha.
For the most part, though, you'll get me, and after that,
Understood.
I'll figure out if I need to adjust things.
Do you feel a pressure to, though? Like, do you feel like that's your first instinct when you're in those situations, is to kind of like, okay, I don't want to present myself as too aggressive because I know that this might be the response, or when I'm around this group of people, I want to make sure that they know I know, you know what I mean?
I've definitely felt pressure before, and sometimes it's because, like I was saying, I kind of learned the individual, and I learned that, okay, if I approach it this certain type of way, this is the response I got to get. And I'll say this more to get a better understanding of what I mean, like in a work setting, for instance.
Okay.
So there's certain people, whether it would be my direct supervisor, the person I'd have to report to directly, or somebody above them, or maybe somebody that I work with on a team or I'm a leader for. There were certain things that I would learn about an individual to understand maybe approaching them this way isn't going to get the result that I desire. And those results was always work based. It's like, hey, I need this thing to change on my system so I can get the work done. I know if I go to him and I just like, hey man, this ain't working, yada yada yada, he's not gonna respond to that. But if I go with, analytics and data and
Yeah.
all this information, well, that's irrefutable. So he's not going to sit there and dismiss whatever I got to say. It's something I actually learned. I did like this leader management training when I worked as a supervisor in a plant, and part of the things we learned was just there's different ways that people respond to information. You have people who are very responsive to just being loud and aggressive, and they actually respond better to that. Where there are people who are very analytical and they want to see the data and they want to see the charts, they want to see you prove out what you're saying. And once you learn that about someone, to better have that connection, sometimes you have to adjust the way you approach it. But I will say, on a personality level, I don't like to try to change who I am or my taste or what I'd like to fit whatever the conversation is or what the other person is expecting. So a lot of that pressure mostly came from knowing how I am, knowing what I look like, what people will perceive from me just looking at me, and just working around what I got to work around. If it's work, I got to work around that. If I'm on the streets, fuck you. That's kind of like how I look at it.
Understood. Well responded.
Yeah, probably a bit wordy, but it's a good question because it's definitely something I thought about myself a lot and really had to have those kind of inner monologues, like, how much am I changing up myself to allow somebody else to be comfortable, and am I okay with that?
Yeah.
So, very good question.
Yeah.
All right. Now I got a question for you. This is not as deep, but is there an artist or a song that you listen to that you've played often, but you feel it's kind of like a guilty pleasure, like something you wouldn't really want to introduce to other folks or maybe talk about a lot? It's like, I listen to this guy or I listen to this, type of music a lot, but
Yeah,
it's
I
not
get what
something
you mean.
yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't know. I'm very open-minded when it comes to music, so I don't really care necessarily. I'm aware that if I bring up certain artists in certain social situations, there's a very strong chance that I'm going to get a weird or off-putting reaction to them. And it's funny because it's so fucking vastly different. Like, sometimes that artist is Madonna. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, ugh. But it's one of those things that, I don't know. I don't really think that there's a specific artist that if somebody heard me listening to, I would feel any type of embarrassment towards, just because I love music, so I don't really care when listening. I will say there are certain artists that are a little bit harder to explain on a general level. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's an artist named Sophie, and she's got a song called Pony Boy. And in the song, she says, like, something along the lines of, like, I ride him like a pony boy. So it's the same thing as if somebody, like, walked in on me watching a movie with a sex scene, and you have to very quickly explain, like, I'm not watching porno. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
but besides, I guess, little stuff like that, I don't really give a shit at the end of the day.
Fair enough.
I don't know if I have any what I would consider guilty pleasure music, because if I like it, it's a pleasure. I don't really feel guilty about it too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I guess in concept, if you had a guilty pleasure, you'd have to question, like, where's the guilt coming from? Because for something like music to be artistic, if you're feeling guilty about it, like, is it really fucked up music?
And on
You know
top
what I
of
mean?
that too, I think when I was growing up, when it came to the conversation of music, I've always loved music, so I always felt like when I was young, a lot of people thought I knew more about music than they did, at least in the social settings that I was in. So when I've been around people who I feel like know more about music than I do, I've had moments of embarrassment where I've like mentioned like I'm a big Oasis fan, and then somebody who actually plays music goes like, "Oh my God, Oasis, they write such simple shit." And as I've gotten older, I don't really give a shit. But I guess like with the exception of being in those types of situations, I don't really feel any embarrassment. And a lot of the embarrassment came from, oh, well, they actually know music. Do you know what I mean? They know more than
Right,
I do.
right.
So in this situation, clearly they have like an insight that I don't have. But as I've gotten older, A, Oasis is the shit. I don't give a fuck. Two, a lot of people, I've heard musicians discredit musicians that I like idolize. And they're musicians that I idolize that are discrediting other musicians that I idolize. And then once you've like accepted that, oh, okay, some things just don't cross over. I've heard rock artists discredit hip hop as a genre entirely. Yet when I've listened to, certain hip hop artists, I've seen like strokes of genius that I've never seen in any other type of music. So it's a really, at the end of the day, I think as long as you're very secure with yourself and you're listening to music for the right reasons and it's not a social thing, then I don't really think there should be any embarrassment when it comes to that. Even if you're listening to like anime soundtracks and stuff like that, like do what you got to do. Enjoy yourself.
I feel like that was a shot, but
No,
yeah.
I mean, do you listen to anime soundtracks specifically?
I don't know if I say specifically. Like I've definitely, something I've been listening to a lot lately has been like, 80s Japanese pop. Like
Okay.
it's when you hear it, you immediately go, "Oh, that's like an '80s pop song," but it's all in Japanese. I don't know
I got
what
one.
they're
Have
talking
you ever
about.
listened to Fishman's?
But Fishman's sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
I would suggest them. I think they're a very
Okay.
good band. They're a very, very good band. I want to make sure that
Yeah,
I got the
and
name of the artist right real quick, but
I
yeah,
think with a lot of
Fishman's.
those
I'm
things,
a very big fan. I'll send you a
Fishman's-
song, but
Yeah.
we'll move on before we get too deep into it. To answer your question, no, I do not feel I have any guilty pleasure music, if that makes sense. I like all music.
No, definitely makes sense.
I'm innocent. When it comes to listening to music, I'm innocent. Okay, so my question then?
Yep.
Aha, here's a good follow-up. What do you hope to accomplish for yourself personally, personally, in doing this podcast? So what do you hope to accomplish for yourself personally in doing this podcast?
It's funny. We were kind of just talking about this a little bit before the podcast. Um, I think with everybody, there's certain things you realize about yourself that you want to improve, but in terms of like how to improve it, how do you go about improving those certain qualities, or what does it even mean to improve something about yourself? It's the hardest part to kind of overcome first. And for me, one of the things that I know about myself that I always wanted to be greater at or kind of work on was my confidence. So part of it was accepting that, as much as I do want to talk to people and I want to have those social interactions, I also want to step outside of the comfort zone a bit, and doing something like this, like being on video, talking, putting something out there that's going to be out there for people to have forever, and I can't take back and I can't retract necessarily.
Can't take it back. You're sucked.
Hey,
You're fucked.
it's
Should use screwed. I should start eliminating the dirty language. My apologies. Go ahead.
no, but it's definitely it's scary a little bit, and I'm not scary in like I'm terrified every time we do this kind of thing, but it's definitely not something I'm used to. And so part of it is this allows me a way to grow myself and to better understand different aspects about myself. So going forward, like that, that everyday struggle at trying to be a little bit better than you were the day before. That's kind of how I treat this podcast. Like I want to, ideally, of course, every time we shoot, every time we make content, I want it to be better, because on the sense of what I want to accomplish for like the audience, what I want them to get from this. We talked about that first episode. I want this to be a good time. I want this to be something that when you have a bad day or you're having the greatest day, you just want to be able to listen to people talk. You want to feel like, hey, I got some friends that get where I'm coming from, that kind of thing. I want you to get those vibes from this. So the biggest thing for me is self-improvement, and always striving to be better, not only just for myself, but for the people that, care to hear the things I got to talk about.
understood completely. So, good answer, I think.
Yeah, that's the answer you want
Maintain
to get. So.
positivity.
All right, I'll go on to my next one, and this one I got to set up this scenario because I figure I could ask the question, but
Is this
then
an F1 kill one, marry one?
no, ain't nothing like that.
Okay.
So, imagine you just hit the lottery, and then you were tragically struck by lightning and died. So,
Okay.
God feeling bad, he's like, all right, I'll let you organize your own concert. You can choose whoever you want. It's 4 acts. And you're not limited to only people you'd expect to go to heaven. So, I don't know who you expect to go to hell. I would imagine if there is a heaven or hell, Slayer's probably not there. Not to say anyone in Slayer is dead, but you know what I mean?
Well, there are people in Slayer who are dead, but...
True. Actually, I'm
okay,
not bad.
so God feels bad because right after I won the lottery, I got struck by lightning and passed away.
Yeah. He's like, damn, it's shitty luck. So.
Giving me that stroke of excitement there for a second. In regards to the dream concert, first of all, they should also feel bad when they tax 95% of that. Because that's how other regular people feel when they win the lottery. They're like, yeah, I'm rich. Well, a little bit. We're rich. You have something,
yes.
But it was cool. But no, in regards to the actual question itself, that's a tough one. Realistically, though, if I had to answer honestly off the top of my head, Beatles, Queen, just because those are 2 concerts that I've never had an opportunity to go to, and I'd love to see Freddie Mercury live. Honestly, legitimately, then probably Prince and David Bowie. So, I assume they're all in heaven.
Yeah, I mean...
That makes sense to me. Why wouldn't they put them in heaven?
I think that's how it works, honestly. In my opinion, is what makes sense to you is what it's going to turn out to be. Because it's so subjective. It's like, who's right, who's wrong? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would argue against...
Yeah, what do words even mean?
Not a whole lot, but
oh boy, the conversation's broken down. Nothing matters anymore.
No, shit matters. Shit definitely
Prince.
matters.
Okay,
but...
I think the better question is, I'll throw that one right back to you real quick. With the lineup that I just set up, who's closing?
Ooh, who's closing?
Okay, here's how it works.
I'm gonna say Prince.
Prince closes. That's the only thing that makes sense. You put Queen on first to piss them off, so they put on a Live Aid type performance. I feel like then you got to go Bowie, Beatles. Nothing against Bowie. I love David Bowie, and I'd personally prefer to see a concert of his to the Beatles. No disrespect to the Beatles, but I feel like the Beatles can't go on second. That seems unfair. They got to get something for having the most #1 hits ever. It's got to count for something somewhere, I guess. But yeah, no, it'd be those 4 artists. I'd definitely go with Queen, Beatles, Prince, and David Bowie. Which, my next question has nothing to do with anything. Do you have an answer? You said Prince would close?
Yeah, no, Prince would close. Prince would close.
While we're talking about sexual fluidity, do you have any embarrassing mall stories?
Mall stories?
Yeah, like have you ever been at like a mall and you've ever had anything embarrassing happen to you? Maybe you like walked into the wrong store, or you stared at an ass that didn't belong to the gender of a person that you thought it did. Or maybe you ordered something and they yelled out your name, but they pronounced it wrong, and that was really embarrassing. Have you ever had anything like that happen to you?
I mean, I sure have. The most immediate thing I could think of is I was at the mall with 2 guys that I was friends with, playing football and whatnot, and teenagers. So we just, I guess, we do random things sometimes, but for some reason they thought it was like real funny to just randomly pull their dicks out in the middle of the mall. So that was definitely a time where I was just like, all right, well, I don't even know what the fuck I do at this point other than walk away. But I still, like, I know you for who you guys are. You're not normally the take my dick out in the middle of the mall type of folks. So I don't want to just
no,
walk
they are.
away, but
that's once you've done it, you are a pull your dick out in the mall type of person. It doesn't go back. I think you
true,
were probably
that's
better
fair.
off using one of the examples that I gave you. But hey, that's an
Well, you said a
embarrassing
lot,
story
and
too.
I only remember so much from each. So
Understood
the first thing
completely.
that popped up was, yeah, I was super embarrassed. I was like, I don't even want to be here. I didn't
Yeah,
want
no,
to
that
go
would make me
back.
very uncomfortable as well. I would probably be
Yeah,
unhappy in that situation if I'm being honest.
if circumstances only are slightly different, probably could be put on the sex offender list.
Eh.
So I
If
mean,
circumstances, as in they would have justifiably have been caught and put on the sex offense, no, I'm not going to encourage for anything like that. But your question.
nah, yeah. All right, let's see. We got. This is a little bit of a different question, but uh, so with social media, like there's different
Apps and such.
patterns. There's different trends and whatnot of posts and memes and whatnot. What is one that you find that you really don't like, or you've seen enough that like every time you see it, it's just kind of eats at you a little bit. Not necessarily gets you all riled up because I doubt that you get that
Yeah.
much involved in it, but
So what's a trend or a meme that I dislike?
yeah,
Kind of.
anything that you've seen like done on social media, like every time I see this, I you feel it makes you feel some way.
I'm having a sensory overload with that question.
No,
Um,
it's a
I got
weird,
two.
really not
Uh,
worded the greatest.
I think one of the things recently that bothered me a lot was when the people were licking the ice cream. I don't know if you remember that. That was like within a year or two ago. Like, I don't know. Honestly, it sounds morbid. If you're dumb enough to light yourself on fire, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to eat a Tide Pod, you're a dipshit. That's on you, right? Like, you're potentially hurting yourself in that situation, and that's not a
Hmm.
good thing. I don't obviously encourage people to self harm, but I can't really, like, what are you going to do? When you're licking somebody's ice cream, I don't know. That just there's so much trust I have when I eat ice cream, and I take that first bite with so much excitement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I just can't wait to dig into it, and I'll lick the lid and shit when I get done. So the idea of somebody having licked the ice cream and then pressed the lid down on top of their nasty ass tongue residue, and then I dig into that shit and I enjoy it. Like I don't know. I feel like they should be eating Tide Pods.
Fair enough. No,
That's the most I got to that probably. That's the nicest answer I'm gonna give.
the one I'll just throw in my little one right now. The one I don't care for too much, even though I just talked about self improvement and whatnot, are the ones where somebody will post something like, "The old me died. It's not here anymore," or
Yeah, yeah.
"I don't do this." Those posts where it's some super dramatic way of saying I'm trying to do better for myself. Which,
Mm.
don't get me wrong, I want people to do that. But when you have to go out of your way to put it on social media that that's what you're doing and this is how things are going to be, it doesn't seem genuine. It seems more like I felt this way and now I want to express that I felt this way, but I'm not really doing much about it because I'm doing the same thing I did before I did that. So
Yeah, I get what you mean. I also, while
yeah,
I'm on it too, another one that I dislike. I dislike the trend where people go back 15 years and try to find the one or two things that somebody said that aren't perfect, and
yeah,
they not just post it. I dislike when people hold it over people's heads. That's a
yep.
bitch move to me. If you want to post that publicly, hey, expose people. I guess live your life. I mean, that's a weird trend, but hey, do what you got to do. I guess. I think when you take it and use it for blackmail, you're a bitch because you're not even trying to like better society or anything like some people try to say that they are when they expose some of these people. You're trying
Well,
to
I got a
exploit
story to tell
people.
you later, man. That just reminded me of some shit I seen the other day.
Do you have one of the 22 people who watched our podcast last week hit you up and be like, "Hey, Maurice, I got something that you said in 8th grade"?
Nah, it's
Because if they did,
more
we can
so.
track down who it is. We can probably find all of the people who are watching the podcast. It's a small circle right now.
Fair enough. It's probably somebody within 20 miles of our residence,
Hmm.
so that's
But
pretty true.
I think that's my question back to you then in
Yep.
this situation. Okay, I got one for you. Um, why? I didn't know how to word this one necessarily because I didn't really know where I wanted to focus the question at, but the general idea is still the same. So I guess I'll just say the way I read it or wrote. I wrote it down. Um, why do you think you have such an interest in anime? Like, what is it about that art form specifically that you feel like you grew such an attachment to, or what caused you to grow an attachment to it?
So I'll say this. If you ask my former therapist, gotta find a new one. But anyway, you ask him, it's because
this one's a deeper question than I was expecting. I'm happy with the answer to this
well,
one.
hey,
What my therapist said.
It was a good point. I mean, not to get sidetracked. Anyway, not to get sidetracked.
It's on hiatus.
When I had most of conversations with him, it's a lot of me kind of bouncing off my own ideas and talking about what I was thinking at the time, and it was a really a good way to talk freely about some of the thoughts I had without necessarily needing a response or something to add on to it, and it helped me just figure some things out that way. So one of the things we were talking about was I do have this sense of like I have to do more for others than for myself, to the point where there's almost this weird, like, we were talking about how, like, talking to folks, I try not to lose too much of myself to give them comfort being around me or talk to me about the situation. Like, I don't try to change too much of who I am or what I think for that reason. But before that was something that I really felt strongly about and didn't want to do anymore. There was this sense of, I just want people to be happy, and I don't want people to be sad. I don't want people to feel these terrible feelings that I felt before. So I've done things to kind of go out of my way to do whatever was needed to keep someone happy or take care of someone or be there for them, even if it meant like sacrificing something of myself. And it was that sense of do something for all and nothing for myself that kind of made me realize a lot of the main characters that I watched in anime kind of had the same thing going on, where it was this sense of justice. And always, I mean, we're talking on a whole nother level of, like, you know, Batman, for instance, not in an anime, but it's the sense of like, hey, he doesn't have to do any of the shit he does in Gotham, but he does it out of the sense he's experienced that loss of his parents, and he doesn't want that for his city. He could be just another rich motherfucker living his life somewhere else and not have to worry about anything, but he has that sense of justice to sacrifice and have to live this double life and all the trouble that comes with it to do better for others. And you've seen that thing with so many other characters in anime that for me it was watching that and watching the spectacle of them overachieving these huge, almost unworldly threats and plights to do what they just felt was the right thing to do as good people. I could really get with that. It was something so easy for me. So then it just became something that I almost sometimes felt like I could be like certain characters, because there would be like there would be characters that wouldn't outright say, oh yeah, I'm here for justice, and they weren't necessarily your quote goody two shoe kind of characters, but they had this confidence and this swag about them that despite them acting like, oh, I don't really care about this, you seen through their actions and the things they've done to go out of their way to help others, that I was like, I kind of want to be like that guy. That's my idea of like somebody I would respect or idolize. So that's kind of what started it. And then after that, it just expanded once I started understanding things on a different level. I grew up, I started watching movies more and picking up on some of the things in film that I really enjoyed and how it transitioned over to anime. It's just now it's this art form that I truly respect. When you see the good ones, they're really good. And right now with anime, it's like this explosion of all these different shows that are almost all must-sees. There's a lot that you could pass, but there's a lot that's like, when you get the chance, you should watch this. It's almost overwhelming sometimes, but yeah, that would probably be the main reason why I got into it. That just I could relate to the main characters a lot.
It was a much deeper answer than I was anticipating, but I'll take it, of course.
That's it, man. That's talked about it in therapy. I got more of a simple
The hero
question for you
complex.
next. Yeah, you know,
I'll go for it.
hero complex. That's probably what it's called, but
Yeah, and it always sounds mean when you say the complex thing after, because then it makes it. Yeah, I apologize.
no, but I mean, it is that, you know,
General
I,
idea,
I don't
though,
know
yeah.
what. I guess I don't know what defines something as being a complex, so that's why I was like, I guess it could be that.
That's a fair
but,
point as well. Yeah.
But my next question, I feel like all my questions are real lighthearted, and then you get to the real soul turning ones. But anyway, what's the last movie that you've seen that you really liked and would recommend to others? Or if there's not one you can really think on that end, is there something that you watched that were like, oh, this is really bad, and I wish I had my time back, and I'll just tell people not to watch this.
I don't remember the last movie that I watched.
It doesn't have to be the very last
I
one,
get what
just
you-
recent
okay.
memory.
I guess in that case, the movie that I like recommending to people in case they haven't seen it is Jojo Rabbit. Taika Waititi's an incredible director, and he's got a lot of like really fun but emotional stories. It's incredibly easy to watch. It's insanely entertaining, and I think it was the best movie of the year that it came out. And watch Jojo Rabbit. That's my recommendation.
Hey, Jojo Rabbit was the shit. I watched that not expecting to see what I got, but
Yeah, it's a fun movie because I feel like you don't really know what to expect going into it, even if
Yeah.
you have an expectation for what it is. If that makes sense, because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
such a wild concept that it's kind of hard to fully like realize what exactly the story is going to turn out to be. But I was very impressed with it. I like most of Taika Waititi's movies. I also think Hunt for the Wilder People is a very good movie that people should go back and watch. So there's two. Same director. I know it doesn't
Damn.
fully count, but that's what I'm throwing back at you. I put 200% on the answer to that question, okay?
hey, people can't argue with a good recommendation.
Hell yeah, or math.
All right, it's your question, sir.
Oh shit, my bad. I was waiting for another one. Let's see. I got a good one. I like this question because I thought about it myself quite a bit as well. So when we first started the podcast, you were going as Big Blurred, which for people who don't understand means black nerd, right? So my question to you is, do you feel that you yourself identify as a nerd, or do you feel like you were put in that category at a young age, so you've just continued to ride with it since?
It's definitely the former. It's something
Okay.
that I've.
So you self-identify as a nerd. That's not
yes.
a term that, okay, you had bestowed upon you. Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because when I was really younger, like I'd say maybe 7th or 8th grade, talking about anime, especially with anybody in the black community, was like kind of, it's like, oh, you watch that anime, Japanese, oh, you watch hentai. Like, it was just always this big, like,
Yeah.
weird thing, right? Like, nobody really fucked with it or liked it, right? So, gotta work on that too.
I know, man. It's so easy to swear. I've realized I've done it excessively since we've started.
Yeah, but nowadays it's very accepted. Like there's so many people out there who'll talk about, man, I love Dragon Ball Z. I love Naruto, and those are obviously the two, the heavy hitters, right? Like everybody watched that at some point, right? But even when you get to some of the more, really like niche, like you have to follow anime to really even know what this is, kind of stuff, it's way more accepted. And for me, it was more like, identifying myself as being a black nerd was more so of me saying I wanted to be a part of that community, that community of people who, didn't care, what was thought to be the ideal thing for us to enjoy and want to like and want to have an interest in, but the thing that we actually care for, which was anime, which was comic books, or a lot of stuff. So I guess what I'm trying to say is definitely self-identified. Wasn't really ever like made fun of it or felt like, oh, I'm a nerd because I like these nerdy things. but I wear it more as a badge of like just like this is really who I am. This
Yeah.
is by definition these are the things I like. So if you want to know like the short answer of like what to expect and talk to me all that, you can kind of attribute it this way, and it's something that is very more lighthearted and innocent almost nowadays. Like where I guess before being called a nerd was like a negative thing
Yeah.
or like a derogatory term. It's I don't think I've ever heard anyone really say it like that in recent history. Like it's more uh, not glorified, but you know what I
It's
mean. Like
definitely more
it's
widely accepted. I think that
yeah,
it's not as what's that, the scarlet letter? When you wear
yeah,
around the title of nerd, it doesn't carry the weight that it used to like that anymore. Like I think it's a lot more of a widely accepted thing.
yeah. So like I said, for me, it was more of a this is kind of a quick way to kind of get what I like, and you could kind of get a general idea like, oh, you he's calling himself Blurred. He's clearly likes these kind of subjects and these kind of things. Um,
That's
I guess
interesting.
it's like calling yourself um, I don't know I was
A
trying to I'm
geek?
thinking of all these activities and I couldn't think of like what you would call someone who's
I know what
involved
you
in it.
mean. Yeah.
I thought about CrossFit. And I don't think they call people who do CrossFit like CrossFitters, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like
that's
if
offensive.
there was a
You shouldn't
team,
say that. You definitely shouldn't say that.
if there was a term for like people who were really into CrossFit, and you call
Mhm.
that a person like a person called themselves that, that's enough for you to know like, oh, that means you are interested in these kind of activities.
Yeah, well, that's why it's really interesting to me because the term I've heard it also used to describe somebody who's just not very popular, even if they don't have like I used to hear it when we played basketball, and these are kids that don't watch cartoons, they don't give a damn about comic books, and they're into sports. You know what I mean? Like they're into all of these like not as nerdy things, I guess, in that situation, and they would be called nerd because they like looked a certain way. So I wasn't sure if that was ever something that you experienced when you were growing up, or
Nah,
if that was
nah,
something that you just, as you grew older, you're like, no, I feel like I fit into the category of nerd because of, in this case, anime, probably history and science and a few other subjects that you have a big interest in. So that's interesting.
yeah. For me, it's I definitely I'm a huge fan of new knowledge. I'm a huge fan of learning. I'm a huge fan of clearly anime. So
Yeah.
those kind of things. I mean, if it's easier to kind of define it by just saying I'm a nerd in that sense,
Hmm.
I'm fine with it. And I have no problem being called that or being associated like that. So yeah, it's no ill will to that.
I understand completely. You can call me anything you want, just make sure you mean it.
Exactly.
Don't call me something that you don't believe in. Your
All
question.
right. So yep. Next one. This is a football question. If you were forced to no longer be a Cowboys fan, and the only team you could root for was a division rival of theirs, what team would that be?
I won't watch football.
I'm saying you have to.
If I have to, oh well, I
You
guess
have
in
to.
that case.
I get your point, but if you had to,
Here's the thing. I don't like the Dallas Cowboys. I have an emotional attachment to the Dallas Cowboys. Every
fair.
decision that they make annoys me. I think Jerry Jones is a dipshit. He's a racist idiot. It's not a fun team to support. But growing up, my dad was a diehard Cowboys fan, so I'm always going to have an emotional attachment to the success that they do or do not have. With that being said, if I was forced to root for somebody else in the NFC East, I don't know. I fucking
That's I thought it was a good question, man.
I
It's
guess
torture.
probably the Eagles. They don't bother me as much as some other teams do. And when I was a kid, I was a Donovan McNabb fan, but not Giants. And I got the football team. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. Those are jokes. So
Yeah.
I guess if I had to answer in the division, I'm gonna go with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's probably the team that if I had to. I used to
All
have an
right.
Eagles
Philly
jersey,
gets
so
the
clearly
win.
it doesn't offend me too much.
Was it a TL jersey? Did I remember that
No,
right?
no, I
Or
had a Donovan McNabb jersey.
oh, got that
I had a
wrong.
T.O. Dallas Cowboys jersey.
Oh yeah, that's where that
I wasn't buying that
number
jersey
came
until he went
from.
to the right
Yeah.
team. All right, here's what I got for you then. This is the most lighthearted one that I probably got.
All right.
If you could rewatch any TV series or movie again for the very first time, what would it be and why? So if you got to relive that first viewing one more time, which show or movie would you choose to do that with?
That's a good ass question. Huh.
I think I broke him.
It's a good ass question,
It's
man.
stumped.
Because you know, I think just right off the top of my head, it'd probably be Breaking Bad.
Okay.
I really liked the themes expressed in that show. The writing was really good. And knowing, like, that's a show that I can enjoy rewatching now because I know what's happening in more depth and I know what's going to happen. You can rewatch that, and little certain acts and little certain moments mean so much more now, right? But it's also a little bit of that wonder, that suspense of not knowing how the hell shit was going to turn out, what was going to be the next move for certain characters, the actions that other characters did in certain moments. And I'm being very vague right now because
Yeah.
yeah,
Spoil the show, I guess.
I know it's old, and I always get where people are coming from. Where like, hey, it's been out for 8 years, so or however long Breaking Bad's been out. But for anyone that wants to watch it and has to watch it for the first time, it doesn't have to answer that question.
Yeah.
It's a good show, so that'd probably be the one.
You go with Breaking Bad? That's a good answer.
Yeah. What about you?
If I had to rewatch something, probably The Dark Knight. I'd be interested in seeing, because I loved that movie when I was younger and I didn't understand why, and I understand storytelling a lot more now. And when I watch it, I respect the hell out of it for that reason. So it would be really cool if I could combine like the knowledge that I have on movies now with the experience of never having watched that one before.
That's a very good one.
And I'm always still, every time I see Heath Ledger's performance, it's still like I'm in awe of it. So if I could go back and experience just that one more time, I'd be okay with that as well.
That's very true. A very strong number two. Honestly, I tied for number one. Dragon Ball. If I could rewatch Dragon Ball without knowing anything, and in extension, Dragon Ball Z too, because for me, I watched Dragon Ball Z first, and then I went back and watched Dragon Ball. If I could watch Dragon Ball not knowing anything about what's going to happen to Goku after those events, that would be really fun.
Oh, I understand completely. Yeah.
That has a special place for me only because that was one of the times where like I started realizing not everything's great with shows. Like I love Dragon Ball Z, but when it got away from the martial arts of Dragon Ball and became more of these like power fights and energy ki blasts, everything, and shit just got a little bit boring. Like there was he's got a secret technique, he's gonna pull it out in the tournament. Now it's like, oh, he's gonna make a big ball of energy and blow up the world. All right. So
Understood completely. Yeah, that'd be a good one to go back and watch again as well. There's a lot of shows that if I could, I would. So that's why I thought that was a good question to ask right there. I'll toss it to
Really
you.
was.
This should be your sixth question if I'm correct.
Yep. Next one. Well, it's actually a straightforward question. What is one of, if not the biggest fear that you have?
Do you mean like personal fears or do you mean like spooky fears?
It could be either. I'm flexible.
Understood. My fear is that I'm not as flexible as I thought I am and somebody's going to snap me in half one day.
That's an interesting fear. I was about to say someone's got to really be biggest. Like I think the actual term.
Or
would
I'm
be
not as flexible as I thought I
humongous.
was, and I try to push it past where I was capable. No, I don't know. That's a tough one. I try not to focus on those things too much, but I guess if there's one thing that would really bother me, it would be if I don't attempt to do some of the things in life that I hope for, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think I'd be really mad at myself if I didn't pursue a relationship with somebody that I loved, and if I didn't pursue any of my individual dreams, and if I didn't participate in the hobbies that I've always had an affection for. And you know what I mean? Like, I feel like those basic fears of not maximizing the experience. You know what I mean?
A fear of ever having looked back and have regrets.
Yeah, and you know, I think inevitably there are going to be regrets. I just hope that they're not regrets that I know. Like, there are a lot of things in life that surprisingly have a strong effect on your life. There are a lot of experiences that you encounter that you don't realize, but they have a much bigger impact on you, whether it be, you know, psychologically or just emotionally or whatever the case is, than you probably thought that they would, right? But I think I'm more concerned about, like, I love storytelling. So I would be mad at myself if I never tried to tell a story. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that I'm in love with that, so I would be mad at myself if I didn't. Like, I know I love the person that I'm with, so I would be mad if I didn't pursue a relationship with them, even if I'm not always completely secure in the way that I am. So I think those are the things that I really, really fear, is, like, if I look back and I go, like, I didn't tell you guys that I loved you. Do you get what I mean? Like, those kind of major things. I think that there's a lot of things that I'm going to regret not having done or having taken too long to do. I mean, we talked the other day, and you said that if you could, you'd go back and you box, because you feel like with the knowledge that you have now, and if you would have started at a young enough age, you maybe could have done something within it. Like, those kind of things I think are going to come and go, but I think there are certain things that I just, my whole life I've wanted to. So just within the first quarter of my life, assuming I live to 100, I feel like now in the second act, I got to accomplish A, B, C, D. And if I don't do that, or at least try to do that, then I'm probably going to look back and feel disappointment. And I guess, I don't know, to answer more directly, I think, like most people, I fear being on my deathbed, looking back and feeling like I said I didn't maximize the opportunity. Like, I didn't do the things that I should have done, not just the things that I wished I'd done. Because there's a difference in my opinion. I think, especially with the benefit of hindsight, there are a lot of things that people focus on that they could have never had any control over. You only can change that situation because you have information now. I ain't worried about those situations. I'm worried about, like I said, like, you know, I know the people that I love. I want to make sure that I help provide for them. I know the things that I want to accomplish. I want to put in the effort to accomplish them. Everything that happens after that, I'm going to have other things that come up that I'm going to want to accomplish. And like I said, I hope at the end of the day, I feel like I at least put in the effort.
Very good. Excuse me. Very good response. So,
and being snapped in half because I'm not as flexible as I thought I was.
I'm just still trying to picture someone being able to grab your bottom and top half and literally do that. I think the only person that could is no longer alive, and that's Andre the Giant.
Thanos.
So,
oh.
Or, well, yeah, but I mean, like,
even then, or maybe
lived.
It's like, hey, I want to stretch out my legs. Can you help me out? And then I keep going and I keep going, and then my back's just like.
Yeah, it can happen. I watched someone. It could happen. All right. So
it's my question number 7, correct?
Yep.
Aha. So when you look back, can you name any positive traits that you feel like you have that you know you developed from the people that you grew up with?
Yeah. My work ethic and my kindness to people, that's a direct derivative from my mother. Honestly, and this seems very specific, but it kind of, you asked the question about like what got me into anime. Something else that helped a lot with anime was video games, but it was a particular series of video games called Persona. Mm-hmm. I heard about it before. The only time I ever took interest was when my little brother chose that game as one of the games he wanted to rent from the video store, and I overtook it from him. He
stole it.
I mean, almost
it's an identity in your life now.
It is, man. It truly is. Like that game, that whole series, I love it. It's probably my favorite series of video game, favorite franchise of video game, period. So it's like, that wouldn't be the case without him having gotten that game and something that we bond over a lot too, growing up. So, um, my part of my love for anime comes from my brother. Um, and then besides that, I mean, it's hard to kind of like quantify that a bit because there's so many little things and nuances about me and who I am that truly does come from the people I grew up with.
Yeah.
My grandmother, my uncles, my aunts, you, other friends, other people, just people I met and dealt with in school and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now it's a good question. I'd have to really think about it to kind of like say like in depth what other traits, but definitely something that I known for a very long time. My kindness, my care for others, my work ethic to when it comes to having to take care and do and stay on top of something,
Mm-hmm.
that comes from my mother, and that mainly comes from the example she set. Where there's a lot of times I'll be tired or I feel like I can't do something, and I just think back to those nights of her working like 10, 12 hour shifts to come home and do 5, 6 hours of homework for college and then have to repeat all that again on like 2, 3 hours of sleep and raise two boys. So it was one of those things like I can't make an excuse because I just seen, I seen one woman take care of that, and she had support, she had help, but it was still her. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's probably the biggest one I could think of off the top of my head.
Absolutely. And while you're taking a moment to, I'd also like to extend your mom as a tremendous woman. So I think it's nice that we got a chance to acknowledge that.
Hell yeah, man! Thank you. Her birthday was 2 days ago. Earth Day.
Oh shit.
It's all good, dude. Isn't that no, I actually no.
All right. So
it's-
your question.
Yep. My
Happy
question.
belated birthday, by the way. That's on me.
It's all good. She's cool.
Yeah.
This is another like random fun question I kind of put together. So if you had the choice between the two, you could get old Kanye back. So he's making music, but it's the old Kanye. But the Flaming Lips break up and they never make music again. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario is you get a legit Pink Floyd reunion tour
Mm-hmm.
that you, of course, get to attend, but their catalog gets erased from streaming. So on one end, you get old Kanye back, but no more Flaming Lips.
If I'm being completely honest, okay, so like, I don't mind new Kanye.
I gotcha.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
But you really like old Kanye, though.
Yeah, I like the first few albums a lot, but I think when I look back on it, it's like the middle of his career is where I think he's the strongest. Like, I think you get the most creativity between Cold Winter and probably Yeezus. I think Life of Pablo's not like the fall off point, but he starts to fall off a little bit there at that point. But then he did Kid Sees Ghost, and I thought that was a tremendous project. So, I mean, Flaming Lips, you don't lose their catalog, so I guess I choose the first option. You said I get to see Pink Floyd, but then their catalog disappears forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that
For
selfish.
all streaming. So you could
Oh.
get vinyls or CDs or
That's an interesting proposal right there. That is an interesting one. I think I'd prefer people still have access to the music. I think that one's a lot less because I mean, like you said, the Flaming Rips are just breaking up, so they made all of the music that they have made to this point. And I don't know. It's a tough one though because I don't want to like. It's an interesting. I don't know. I don't really. I like Kanye, so I'm not gonna. It'd be cool to get like I guess one more retro sounding project. But do you think that sound would work today? Like with the Chipmunk, he did like those first 2 or 3 albums. He definitely had a lot more of the like the Chipmunk vocals and the samples, which I don't think always enhanced the song itself. If that makes sense. Like, did you know? Did you know Shaka Khan actually came back and recorded Through the Wire?
No, I did not.
But then he turned her voice up, and she didn't like that. She was not happy with that situation. So that's what I mean. So like, as great as it is, and as big of an impact as it had, and I think a lot of people really like the charm of the personality. He was a lot more likable in the early years. I could agree with that publicly, but I do think musically he really started to push and find himself as his career progressed. So as much as I get the whole like, you know, old Kanye versus the new guy who's doing some of the crazy shit that he's done, I don't know. I think that when you still got Kids See Ghost, like clearly the guy is still musically competent. I don't know. I didn't really like
Yeah.
what was that one called? Yay, and then or whatever.
Which
The last
one?
two.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, or Father is King or whatever that one was called. I thought that one was a little bit goofy. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like no artist is perfect forever. He had like 6 or 7 really strong albums, or at least albums that I generally like across the board. And that's more than you could ever ask for from anybody in history. You know what I mean? Like and any artist that has that many albums that I like, they're usually in my upper echelon. You just mentioned Pink Floyd. I like 8 Pink Floyd albums, and there's a reason for that. So I guess technically, if I'm answering your question, I get old Kanye back, but the Flaming Lips have to break up. I would prefer that to very selfishly seeing Pink Floyd as a bunch of old men and then their catalog being erased forever.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You've already killed me off in today's game, and now you're making me take away an entire generation of music.
You know,
Your questions, I don't know if you intended for that, but your questions they're killing me right now. Literally, I got killed earlier. I will
the
say, though,
last
I
one you
appreciate you letting me
definitely
go to the
got
concert.
killed.
Yeah.
This one it was more of because to the point you made real quick about Kanye, like you're right. It was definitely that progression, and where even now, like the change that he steadily made through music is truly something to look in all, because he still get recognized for all his past work, but
Yeah.
it's not like it's something that, oh, I'm really good at using 808s, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to do 808s and that's it. Because I got put up right next to Rick Rubin with it, you know, as far as what we did with 808s, you know, on our own separate stuff. So that's my thing I'm really good at. That's all I'm going to do. He didn't do that. A lot of people sometimes get a bit comfortable with, I'm really good at doing this, so I'm just going to keep doing that. And
I
then
agree.
you get into like, oh, well, things are a bit repetitive, and are we making music, or are we just trying to be successful at this point? Which, hey, I'm not in that situation to say what's the right
It's a good
move
problem
make.
to have. It's a good problem
Yeah.
to have for your career, I guess.
Hell yeah, it's a good ass
You're
problem.
in that position.
But
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. That was a very specific one, so I give you a very specific answer.
gotcha.
All right,
All right.
so this one is a very easy one. This one's less of a question and I guess more of an instruction because I didn't write a question mark. Name a spot in your life where you know you've grown.
All right.
Your
No,
height?
we talked about that earlier today. So I was about to mention, like, well, I stopped trying to change myself with other people, but I already mentioned that, so I want to try to say something different. Um,
Think your muscles got bigger.
something I've always done, but I feel like I'm a lot better at doing, is trying to think outside the box with subjects. And by outside the box, I mean more so just not looking at certain problems or certain situations as straightforward as it's presented. We talked about, you know, the importance to fact check and to be informed on the things that you read and you hear about online, because if someone's posting something and they have a very clear agenda, of course whatever they're posting is going to have some form of bias in it, and ideally all the information you get is going to be unbiased, but it's just not the world we live in today. So I take that approach with the people I communicate with directly as well, where if something maybe comes off as a bit, oh, maybe this person has a problem with what I said, or maybe this person doesn't like what I said, or they don't care for what I said, instead of just accepting those feelings as, oh, well, I felt that way, it's got to be that way, I try to explore those ideas a bit more to say, well, maybe there's a reason that it came off that way to me. Maybe it's not that they don't like my idea, but they maybe see something about my idea that doesn't work, and they don't necessarily know how to express it without hurting my feeling or something.
Yeah.
So there's times where if like that exact subject or exact situation were to occur, instead of being like, oh, well, maybe I should stop talking about this, I'll look to gain their opinion about it, because I can already tell that maybe you have something to say about this that isn't necessarily good job. And I'm open to criticism, because to me, you don't have to accept all criticism for what it is. Like, everyone's got an opinion, everyone's got an asshole. If someone critiques something I did,
Most people do.
and most people do. Fair. I apologize to anybody who was not born with one. That happens. But if someone has its opinion about what I'm doing, I want to hear it, because it's not to say I'm going to just take whatever they're saying to heart and base what I do next off of just that opinion. But I do want to be, responsive and informed on how does the things I say or do, how does that reflect on others? How do they see that? How do they take that in? Because if they're getting the wrong message, then maybe there is something I need to adjust a little bit, right? So trying to be more open and more thoughtful in my approach to life, to information, to interacting with others, and trying to be a bit more, just expand my thought process about things. That's been something that I definitely got a lot better at, and something I work on getting better at every day.
Very nice. I think we're back on our last two or last three questions. I think you got one more here and then that. So we'll speed it up here in the end, because we're at a little bit over an hour, and I don't want to drag too far over. So I think it's you now.
Yes, sir. And the question I have is, you actually mentioned this band earlier, Queen, and that question when I killed you off. But do you remember the moment or what about Queen that made you fall in love with them? Where that's one of your all-time favorite bands, if not, if you want to say like Freddie Mercury's your favorite frontman, like what was it that captured you that you remember? Because just to give a little background to everybody, like I remember when we were kids and you were talking about Queen, there was a moment where you talked about them, but it wasn't like oh, they're my favorite band thing. And then there was a clear transition to, if anyone asks me at any time, like, what's your favorite music, I'm going to say something Queen. So
yeah, I think in regards to that, I'll backtrack a little bit. Queen's been one of my favorite bands since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was a really big Michael Jackson fan, and I thought Michael Jackson sang Another One Bites the Dust. I thought that was a Michael Jackson song. So when I heard it on the radio one time, and I got corrected, like I said, I like Michael Jackson, and they said, no, this is Queen. It introduced me to them, and then I realized that I knew a few of their other songs. So since I was young, they're a band that I've been able to identify, which I definitely think helps. I don't know. I think I went through a phase in high school where they were my favorite band, and it happened at a time. And so I love Queen very much. They are one of my all-time favorite bands. But very similar to a lot of other things in my life, I think my family interpreted it a little bit like I had an obsession with Queen. So I started getting on a regular basis just Queen merchandise and stuff. So it became a lot easier to identify them as my favorite band, because then it also kind of explained why I had like 5 Queen shirts and why I had a Queen box set and why I had a poster up of all of their, albums and stuff like that. So I was a very big Queen fan. I still am a very big Queen fan. Queen's one of my all-time favorite bands, so that doesn't change. But I definitely think when you go back, that flip is where I just started getting a bunch of Queen stuff. So it got to the point eventually where it's like, okay, I guess this is my band. You know what I mean? Like, these are my guys. But the best thing I've ever seen with Queen is I have it on DVD. It's Queen live at Wembley, and they tear the house down.
It's incredible, dude.
The white and yellow suit.
When I had the opportunity to listen to music while working, I had a job that allowed me to do that. I listened to that whole live album, like front to back, and
yeah, they tear it down.
It's insane, man. You could just feel the, like, the energy that you must have felt being in that crowd when that happened, like, it's insane.
It was a perfect set of circumstances. They were at a point in their career where they had their best discography because they made other music after that that wasn't as well received. They made some stuff into the 90s when Freddie Mercury passed away. But they were at the spot where they hadn't quite made the music that people don't really remember them for. But some of their later hits were right at that time. Like, that's when they do, like, It's a Kind of Magic and Radio Gaga and a few other songs like that. So it was a perfect time in their career. They were in the perfect setting. They were at Wembley Stadium. They're in their home country. People are way bigger Queen fans over there than they are here in America. So I think circumstantially, it is a blessing that they caught all of that on camera. It was a perfect storm. All right, now we move forward a little bit quicker. This is my 9th question, so we each have 2 questions left, correct?
Yep.
All right. My second to last question to you is, while sticking on the theme of apparently your psychological state, what is a major goal in life that you do still wish to accomplish?
You said a major goal?
Yeah, major goal. So, I mean,
Okay.
little stuff is cool too, but I'm looking for something major.
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 I guess a major goal of mine would be
Major.
a major goal of mine is I guess it's kind of like how you responded with my question about what's your biggest fear. My goal is knowing how this works, how we don't know when, but at some point we have an end to all of this, right? I want to be able to, on some level outside of just like family and friends, be able to leave an impression on people that's positive. I want, if anybody could recall who I was and what I've done and what I was about, what my thoughts and feelings were on just anything, if that's something they could take and realize, or I'm sorry, a better way to say it, I'm somebody that really wants the best for all of humanity. And I don't necessarily have the intelligence like Elon Musk to be looking forward into the stars and trying to get us, off this planet, because at some point we're not going to be able to keep living here. So for him, his betterment for humanity is he wants to get us to the next place, the next step. Humans on another planet where they could be thrive, be self-sufficient. And he knows it's not going to be that way by the end of his life, but he's doing his part and heading towards that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in history that you just go back and you see the same thing. It's not that humanity got to where we are today in 10 years. It's been off the blood and sweat and sacrifice of so many others that got us to this point eventually. And I want to be a part of that. And to what capacity, I don't know. And I'm definitely not going to sit here and say, oh, well, I'm not going to be like this guy, because I'm already selling myself short. But if there's any, like I said, a major goal for my life is still to be able to leave some mark here when I'm gone. Not
You
to
want to
be
leave
glorified.
a positive impression on people's lives.
Yes, and not to be glorified, just something that people can look to and realize that, you know what, it is better to do great for all than to kind of just have good for myself, kind of.
Understood completely. Pass it to you for your second to last question.
All right. Do you recall a time when there was somebody of like authority, whether that be like a teacher or an adult or anything like that, like when you were a kid, where they kind of approach you about something with this know-it-all sense, or like they're right, but even as a adolescent, you could realize whatever they were saying was just bullshit? Is there like any moment that really sticks out to you that you recall something like that?
Yeah, well, I have issues with authority anyways. So I think that's a tough question because I probably felt like that a lot more than it actually happened.
Fair.
because I was a very stubborn person when it came to listening to people if I didn't respect you especially, and I struggle a little bit with that, especially when I was at a younger age. It was always weird for me being controlled by people I've never met before who didn't really know about me and my life and didn't necessarily always have an interest in learning about it. But with that being said, I feel like a lot of that did stem from me. Like, I feel like a lot of the conflicts that I had with teachers was probably more me escalating than them. But with that being said, there is one example of a situation that when I look back on, I feel very little guilt on because I feel like they were a bitch and I wasn't. And it was a situation where it was a senior year of high school and I had an art class. So it was just like a basic art class. And the woman who taught the class was very judgmental to me. I can't say that they were like that with everybody, but very, like, right off the bat, I remember they asked me a question and they asked me, what do I see in the picture, right? I love art, right? Like, I love digging into it. I love finding subtext. I've always been like that, even since I was younger. I was sitting in the very back of the class, and she had it up on a projector board in the front of the class, and she was asking me to, like, what do I see in the picture? So I gave her a very basic answer, and she kind of mocked me for it. Right, like you gotta learn to dig in deeper, and you know it's not a very exciting answer. And I remember it wasn't just that she was telling me like, hey, there's actually more to this. It was more a matter of like, yeah, whatever. And I did jokes in class too, so I think she was also trying to single me out specifically for that purpose. But I didn't really get along with her after that because I felt like that was a dick move on her end. So I remember that there was one time where we were talking, and she made a statement to me about like my future. So what happened was there was a project we were supposed to do. I left it in my locker. Okay. My locker, by the way, which is in the school. So at the beginning of class, when I went in there and she asked to turn it in, I was like, hey, would it be possible if I could go back to my locker to pick up my art project? And she said, yeah, just so you know, though, your mommy can't hold your life, or you can't hold your hand in life forever. And I was really confused by that because I think she was trying to, like, I don't know. She was making a weird point to that situation. But I was like, whatever, lady, you're a fucking art teacher.
Oh.
It's not a real job, with all due respect. You're the first person cut on the budget, which is, I feel bad about that now because I wish art teachers got more respect. But at the time, I was like, all right, bitch, well, fuck you. You're going to be unemployed in a month. So who gives a damn? But
hey,
yeah, no, I guess that just feels like sour grapes even bringing up that story.
Shit.
But no, like I said, I don't know if there was just a miscommunication between the woman and I very early on. It's not like she consistently targeted me or anything like that. She never liked my stuff, though, by the way. Like, anything I ever did, if I ever did, like, when we did art projects, we had to do abstract art. So mine was nonsense. And I was literally doing the same. Like, the person who was in my group, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, all right, well, let's just kind of come up with some stuff. It's supposed to be abstract, so, like, you know, don't think about it too much. And we came back around. She was like, oh, yeah, yours is really good. And she went to mine. She's like, that's not quite what we're looking for. And I was like, oh, yeah, she doesn't like me. But with the exception of a few moments like that, all things considered, yeah, no, I guess, I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't like teachers. I feel like that's what you were trying to get me to say in that question. I never liked teachers. I got into a lot of arguments with coaches and stuff like that as well. So I had a coach tell me I had to cut my hair one time. That pissed me off. I think that's why I have issues with people like that, is I think a few people broke it for me. I think a few people felt like they were a little too, like, if you don't cut your hair, you can't represent our school. That is such a fucking crock of bullshit. And the person who asked me that, what pisses me off, had never in my life talked to me before. And the one time that he came over and felt like he could say something to me was when he was telling me that if I didn't cut my hair, I couldn't play. Granted, I had already paid to play. I had already made the team. I had already gotten my jersey. We had already practiced for the entire preseason. And I believe we had already played a game. And then they were like, hey, you know what, kid, if you don't cut your fucking hair. So, fuck the baseball program. What else do I got?
Hey.
There was one time when I was a kid. No, I'm joking.
I mean, as far as the art teacher, you gotta be willing to take it. You're gonna dish it out. Clearly, it sounds like she has something against you. Maybe she's seen like some spark in you that wasn't in her anymore. I don't know.
But I don't think that's a fair interpretation of that.
Hey, I don't
she
know
was
her.
Like, secretly,
so
you're the real artist here. I hate you. I don't believe it was like that. I think it was probably, I was a little bit much. I think I came off as arrogant to a lot of people. So I feel like with the way that my sense of humor can be sometimes, on top of the way that I carry myself, I probably gave her an answer somewhere early on that she felt like she didn't like. I do take exception to the fact that she felt she had to make an example out of me. I think that that was a very bad decision on her end, and I don't think that that was fair to me necessarily. But I will maintain I don't know what the issue was specifically. All I know is there was probably a miscommunication somewhere, but I don't know what my mom has to do with my shit being in the locker.
No, that's what I was saying. Like
That's a little concerning to me. I didn't understand that one. That felt like a personal shot in that moment. That's why I told that story specifically. And then I
Yeah,
started bitching
I get
after
that. I think that the reason why I asked it is because that's not something that's accepted most of the time. Is that like, hey, even though, and I totally get it, kids are not as wise as some adults can be in terms of if you're talking about wisdom in the sense of like experience and gaining knowledge and knowing what to do with that knowledge. Yeah, I mean that's just fair. If you've been on this planet longer, ideally you should know more. But there's definitely times where that's not the case, and I remember specifically talking to you about a lot of those times. That one being one of them. I forgot honestly until you reset it. But yeah, that's the main reason why I asked it. But good answers.
No, I used to get into arguments with teachers a lot. We'll just say it as it is.
Yeah.
I'm bad with authority sometimes.
All
My
right,
last question to you. So last time we did this, the last question that I asked you was if Maurice today could go back and tell Maurice in your teenage years one bit of advice that you think would help guide you in the right direction, what would that bit of advice be? And your answer was basically trust yourself. So my question this week, what I want to end on with you is, what could Maurice in the future say to Maurice today that you feel like Maurice today needs help guiding them in the right direction? I don't know if I worded that the way I wanted to, but it's a harder question to ask.
So you're asking what would my future self...
What could you hear from yourself in the future today that would, I guess, give your mind ease a little bit, would help direct you in the path that you feel like you're headed towards?
Right. I don't know. I thought of too many joke answers like, oh, it comes back negative. You're all good. But
I got you. All that
that's
kind of
not
stuff.
like a real answer.
Yeah. It is a real answer if you have something to be concerned about.
No, I don't.
Okay, gotcha. Would it help if I asked it in a way where it was, what could you ask Maurice in the future? Or what would you want to ask yourself in the future? Would it be easier to word it that way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely get the question. I guess it's a little bit of a hard answer for me to answer only because as much as I think about the future and wanting to know, like, how are things going to work out, I've also very much accepted that, you really got to live in the moment. So it's hard for me to think about what could, like, my future self say outside of just like, hey, you're healthy. No, you're I don't know, you're financially good. You're like, I mean, those things would be cool, but it's also like, I don't, unfortunately, I don't have a real answer. And the only reason why is because just on a concept wise, like how I've thought about things, like it's very much just in the moment for me. Like it's like, as much as a future me could tell me that things are this way or things are that way, it don't change the fact that I still got to experience everything now. And what I do now, what in turn affects how things turn out in the future. Not to get into the whole time travel theory of
Stop
shit,
doing
but
that. You did that shit last time too. You're like, well, technically, if I went back in time. So no, that is not.
I get it. I know, man. It's just
You're being way too. You're like, well, okay, but here's the problem with time travel. Because if future me comes back and tells me anything, then I change the timeline, and it's just not going to be what he said it was. And
Well, that dude in I think he's in Australia. His theory is like no matter what you do, it's going to happen. There's just these loops or something. So like if you go back and let's say you kill patient zero for coronavirus, you would in turn like do something else that it was still the outbreak would still happen because yeah. Anyway,
so he believes. Yeah, gotcha.
Anyway, the point being, I really don't know. I don't know what future me could say that would like provide some type of relief other than there are the daily worries that I think about, like keeping my job, getting healthier, maintaining the relationships I have, and being there for the people I care about, and trying to be the best me I can be. So I guess if there's anything I could sort of try to say that like future me coming back and telling me would be like, without getting really specific on like, oh, is this person alive or not alive or whatever, it's like if he could basically tell me the same thing I would tell the past me, was like, what should I do at this point? Like, should I trust in myself? Should I question this? And it doesn't have to tell me like the exact event of what happened. Like, you don't need to tell me, hey, on December 10th, do this. But if there's something that I need to try to learn, and maybe if I knew now it's going to help me in the future, that would be something I'd like to hear. If it's keep working on your confidence, or hey, keep doing this, keep doing these things. That reassurance that what I'm doing now is the right move.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
Sorry that the question wasn't
No,
as
you're
simple
good.
as
I
that.
understand completely. Yeah, it's time travel's a bitch. I understand. It's a hell of a concept.
Dude,
It's hard to wrap your mind around, apparently.
Well, I mean, for me, yeah, and I blame Marvel. I blame
but technically, the shield wouldn't be there still. The shield.
Well, it goes back to like I like knowledge. So when I said, I think it was a guy in Australia, student, wrote this paper on his theory of time travel and how it would work.
I think that's more interesting. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's really interesting that your interpretation of that question is like, what literal information could they give me, versus what you said, which was if you could tell your past self anything. You didn't think I would go back, because you got to remember, this is you telling yourself something. Right. So you were like, if I could go back and tell myself something, I would say, trust yourself. But then when you're thinking about it from the future, you're like, what the fuck could I tell myself to, like, what day can I win the lot? You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting how the interpretation's different in that regard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe some of it stems from Back to the Future and watching, what's the character, Beth? That was his name? Bert. It started with a B.
Biff.
There we go. And he won that. He didn't win a lottery. He bet on sports, but
yeah, he had the sports almanac.
No, I wouldn't want to do that either. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't. It's hard for me to say what I would want to hear from him to reassure me. Outside of something that would work would be, how's the podcast? How did that work out? That'd probably be the best one. So
there you go.
I would like to know how that works.
What if he just smiled and left?
I mean, at least I know I'm alive. You know, I can kind of gauge like, oh, you look about 60. So at least I know I get to that point.
What if he looks exactly like you? Then are you concerned that your future isn't very long?
I would be concerned.
You're like, that's the same scar I got this morning. That hasn't healed yet. Why are you future me? Why are you future me? Is that all my future is?
I would question more like, what the hell's about to happen that future me from like a day is coming back and smiling at?
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, shit escalated.
How does the podcast go?
Yeah, we did a good recording. I don't know what happens after that.
Exactly.
No, that would be fun.
All right. We'll end it to you real quick. We'll toss it to you. Final question, and then we're done with 20 questions, and then we go back into next week kind of commenting on some social things and things that are happening in the world and talking about pop culture and society and so on and so forth. But we'll do more games like this in the future if people like that. Also, we'll only know if people like that if you guys comment on our stuff and tell us what you think.
And
If you
hit that
watch
like
it,
button,
say something.
that thumbs
Go
up.
ahead. If
all
you
that
see
fun
something, say
stuff.
something. The government told you that, and that's the one thing that I will preach to you as well. If you see something in the podcast, say something. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Maurice. Final question of the day.
My last question's simple one, like most of my questions today. What would be more ideal for you in terms of vacation? Going somewhere out west to like a more cabin like area where
Mhm.
like you got the view of the stars and wilderness and all that, or I know neither one of us has been to anywhere like New York. And the
Mm.
stories I've heard of people who've never been to New York and the experience of actually going and the wonder and everything, it sounds incredible. So it's something I definitely want to do at some point. So I guess so. The question is just like if you could plan a trip after COVID, so there's no restrictions or any stuff like that. What would you rather do first? I mean, I guess you could do both, but what would be like your go-to?
So for context, I'm in the Midwest, and the options are out west or east, East Coast, West Coast,
Essentially,
basically.
essentially like Washington or New York. Yeah,
Okay. For a vacation, you said?
yeah, vacation. So yeah, yeah.
I guess in that regard, probably west because I've been out west before, and I know it's relaxing in certain areas. So all that I've ever heard about like the East Coast, I mean, there's a lot of places to cover across the East Coast that I've never been. That's one spot of the country I admittedly haven't really done a lot of traveling through. So for like experience sake, I would probably say out east. But if I wanted a relaxing vacation, I would go out west because I already know. Like I've been out there and it's been relaxing in certain areas, so I know I would enjoy certain parts of the country. But that's a tough question because, be completely honest, I've become content with where I'm at as time's gone on. You know what I
I
mean?
get that. Have you? I guess for me, like what brought up the question, because I definitely want to do both, but me, I would like to go out west because there's been a few opportunities I had going up north and going on a cruise in the Caribbean where you get away from the city lights and you actually get a view of the stars, and it's insane how many stars
Yeah.
are out there that you don't see because of the light pollution. So I've never had an opportunity to actually see like the Milky Way and just take it on that. Like I've seen so many pictures, but to truly see that in the night sky would be incredible. So it's
I
something
understand completely. Yeah.
like that's something I really want to do for me. Because I think it's well, and I mean I think it is humbling. It is something to kind of get yourself in the right mind frame of mind for things. Like when I went up north, I could see so many stars, but from the point where I was at, I was off the what is that, Lake Superior, I think, or it was really it's a bay by Traverse City,
Mhm.
but um, like there was one time I was sitting outside and it's like 11 or something at night, and I'm looking up at the sky, and it really like sucked me in to realize we're on this planet and there's just this vast emptiness with these
Yeah.
splotches of different stars and solar systems and all of that everywhere. And it was I just sat there and looked at it for like 30 minutes straight. It just kind of got out of my head, and it was a really it's hard to describe what I felt outside of it was it was like a reset almost. It was like it really. I
Mm.
went back in after
You
that,
need
and
a
I was just
vacation.
like,
You
"Well,
need
I
a
needed a
vacation more than
vacation."
I do in this scenario. You could pause life and everything stopped for a second. And all the chaos was gone, and my head was
Well,
clear. And for a moment,
that,
for just
but
one
I guess,
simple moment, everything in life was okay again.
but I mean, look at what we're
I
doing
feel
right
you.
now,
I know what you
right?
mean.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
we got
I
this
understand.
technology in front of us, and we take all that stuff. Not to say we take it for granted, but it's a part of our everyday life. So
Oh
sometimes
yeah,
you
we don't explore
forget
nature. I
the
agree.
real.
I do.
So yeah.
I feel you. I feel you. I was just trying to wrap up because we're at an hour and a half, and I was going to try to wrap before we hit that point, which I now
Yeah.
am going to. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. If you want more things Sacred Time, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Sacred Time Pod. If you want to watch more Sacred Time on YouTube, then go to YouTube and search Sacred Time. And then while you're looking at the channel, make sure you like and subscribe. If you want to follow Maurice on social media, he is on Instagram at Big Blurred.
And Twitter now.
Oh, you're on Twitter now at Big Blurred?
Yep.
Blurred!